At 11:47 that night, Laura Bennett's phone lit up on the kitchen counter. Unknown number. She almost let it go dark. She was 52 years old. Tired in the way a woman gets tired when she has spent the whole day holding a house together without anyone noticing. Bills, laundry, dinner, a son who needed more patience than he would ever admit. A husband who had grown cold enough that even the quiet between them had started to feel rehearsed. Then the first message appeared. Laura, I'm the woman your husband has been seeing. Laura did not move. For 1 second, maybe 2, the kitchen seemed to disappear around her. The clock kept ticking above the stove. The refrigerator gave off its low hum. Upstairs, Mark was somewhere in the house, probably acting like nothing in the world could touch him. But the affair was not the part that destroyed her. Not really. The second message was, he's not just leaving you. He's preparing to make sure you get nothing. Then came the file. APDF. Child Support Projection Laura Bennett. Laura opened it with a hand that felt numb. Inside were Mason's name, Mark's real income, a bank account she had never seen before, and one line so cold it did not even sound human. Push for 50-50 custody to reduce support. So stay close. Because this was not just a story about a husband cheating on his wife. Laura thought she was looking at betrayal. What she had really found was a plan. And sometimes, the affair is only the door. What waits behind it is money, custody, paperwork, and a man who has already decided what your life should be worth. Laura Bennett's life looked ordinary from the outside. That was the kind of word people used when they did not have to carry it. Ordinary. Steady. Fine. She lived in a suburban house with a mortgage that arrived every month, whether anyone was happy or not. She had a teenage son, Mason, who tried to act tougher than he felt. She had a husband people trusted. She had a kitchen calendar, a drawer full of receipts, and a quiet habit of doing the things that kept everyone else's life moving. Laura was not perfect. She would have laughed, softly and a little sadly, if anyone tried to describe her that way. She forgot laundry in the washer and found it the next morning, with that sour smell that ruins your mood before coffee. She lost patience when she was tired. Some mornings, she stood in the kitchen, holding a cold mug, and could not remember what she had come in there to do. But she was dependable, and dependable people are easy to overlook. Laura knew when the mortgage was due. She knew which teacher still needed a reply. She knew which bill could wait 3 days, and which one could not. She knew what Mason would eat when his anxiety made everything else feel impossible. She knew how to keep a home running in silence, without praise, without applause, without anyone asking how heavy it all felt. For years, she worked part-time as a bookkeeper at a small dental office. She liked the work. It gave her a place where things made sense. Numbers did not roll their eyes. They did not tell you that you were overreacting. They did not make you feel foolish for asking a question. They either added up or they did not. Then Mason started having trouble at school. At first, it was easy to explain away. Stomach aches, missed assignments, bad mornings, a little stress. But then came the calls from the nurse, then the emails from the counselor. Then the panic attacks that left her 14-year-old son pale, embarrassed, and exhausted before the school day had even really begun. So Laura cut back her hours. Not because she had no ambition. Not because she wanted her whole life to shrink into grocery lists, school calls, and pharmacy runs. She did it because somebody had to be available when Mason needed to come home before he fell apart in front of everyone. Somebody had to answer the phone. Somebody had to know when to push, when to wait, and when to sit beside him in the car until his breathing slowed down. Mark made that sacrifice sound simple. "You're better with him," he told her. "I'll handle the money." At first, Laura heard love in that, or at least partnership. That was the dangerous part. The beginning did not look like control. It looked practical. It sounded like a husband stepping in where his wife was tired. Mark Bennett was the kind of man people believed. He spoke calmly. He dressed neatly. He worked in logistics consulting, which sounded serious enough to impress people and boring enough to seem honest. He shook hands well. He remembered names. He could sit at a dinner table and make himself sound reasonable without ever saying anything that could be checked. Neighbors saw a successful husband. Clients saw a reliable man. His mother saw the son who carried the whole family on his back. And Laura, in their version of the story, was simply the woman who had stayed home too long and started thinking too much. Their marriage had not always been terrible. That was the part people never understand from the outside. Betrayal is easier to judge when you imagine it was ugly from the beginning. But there had been good years, or at least decent ones. Quiet dinners, school events, family trips where Mason fell asleep in the back seat with one shoe half off, mortgage payments made on time, a lawn Mark sometimes mowed without being asked, winter mornings when the house felt warm enough to mistake for safety. Laura used to believe stability was a kind of love. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that writes letters or makes speeches. The older kind. The practical kind. Bills paid. A roof overhead. A child cared for. A house that did not fall apart. For a long time. That felt like enough. So when Mark slowly took over the finances, Laura did not see a cage being built. She saw a division of labor. "I'm better with taxes," he said. "I understand investments. You focus on Mason." Those sentences did not sound dangerous. They sounded useful. They sounded like marriage. And when you are tired, useful can look a lot like kindness. Laura signed where he told her to sign. She stopped opening certain envelopes because Mark said they were business related. She nodded when he mentioned moving money into a better account, adjusting something, refinancing something, consolidating something. At first, when she asked questions, he explained. Then he corrected. Then he sighed. And after a while, every question about money became a small humiliation. "You wouldn't understand the structure. That's not how cash flow works." "Laura, please. Don't make me explain basic accounting to you." Basic accounting. To a woman who had balanced books for years. That was the quiet cruelty of it. Mark did not just take over the money. He made Laura feel embarrassed for wanting to understand her own life. She was not stupid. She had simply trusted him too long. And when a man gets comfortable controlling the money, he rarely stops there. Eventually, He starts controlling the story, too. He starts deciding who looks responsible, who looks unstable, who looks grateful, and who looks like the problem. By the time Laura saw the truth, Mark had already been writing that version for months, maybe longer. But Laura did not do what he expected. She did not grab his phone. She did not guess his password while he was in the shower. She did not open his laptop when he left it on the desk. She did not break into his email. She did not install anything, track anything, or follow his car through town like a woman losing control. Maybe part of her wanted to. Any betrayed wife would have wanted one clean look behind the curtain. But Laura understood something cold, and she understood it fast. Mark was already trying to make her look unstable. If she gave him one reckless move, he would turn it into proof. So Laura did the one thing he had not prepared for. She stayed quiet. And she did it the right way. 2 days after Jenna sent the file, Laura sat across from a divorce attorney named Denise Harper. Denise's office was above a bank in an old brick building downtown. Nothing about it looked dramatic. No glass walls, no expensive art meant to impress frightened clients. Just bookshelves, case files, a wooden desk, and the kind of quiet that told Laura this woman had heard almost everything before. Denise was 61, silver hair, reading glasses, a calm face that did not waste emotion. She was not warm in a soft way. She was sharp in a way Laura needed. Laura told her everything. She told her about the message from Jenna, the affair, the PDF, the folder, the child support projection, Mason's name sitting inside a file he never should have been part of. She told Denise about Mark's hidden account, his real income, and the line about pushing for 50-50 custody to reduce support. Denise listened without interrupting. That helped more than Laura expected. For months, every question Laura asked at home had been treated like a problem. Too emotional, too suspicious, too sensitive. But in Denise's office, her words were not dismissed. They were examined carefully, quietly, like they mattered. When Laura finished, Denise folded her hands on the desk. According to the rules in this state, what matters is not how angry you are, she said. What matters is what we can prove, how we got it, and whether it shows a pattern. Laura nodded, but the sentence landed hard. Because she was angry. Of course she was. She was angry enough to shake. Angry enough to want to drive home, wake Mark up, throw the file in his face, and ask him what kind of man turns his own son into a number on a spreadsheet. But Denise was right. Anger would not protect Mason. Evidence might. Denise asked exact questions. Had Laura opened Mark's private email? No. Had she guessed his passwords? No. Had she taken files from his computer? No. Had Jenna sent the documents voluntarily? Yes. Did Laura still have the original email with the date, time, and attachments? Yes. Only then did Denise's expression change a little. Not a smile, something smaller. Professional approval. Good, she said. Do not clean anything up. Do not rename the files. Do not crop screenshots. Do not edit anything to make it look better. Evidence does not need to look pretty. It needs to stay honest. That stayed with Laura. Evidence does not need to look pretty. It needs to stay honest. Denise gave her instructions one by one. Save Jenna's original email. Record the date and time it arrived. Print hard copies. Back everything up on a separate drive. Do not send it to friends. Do not text it around in anger. Do not post hints online. From now on, anything important went through her lawyer. Then Denise moved to Mason. That part hurt in the quieter way. Laura needed to collect bank statements from accounts she could legally access. Joint checking. Joint savings. Mortgage records. Shared credit cards. Household bills. Receipts for Mason's school expenses. Therapy. Doctor visits. Dental appointments. Prescriptions. And daily care. She needed emails from teachers, notes from counselors, appointment reminders, anything that showed the real pattern of Mason's life. And she needed a custody calendar, not a diary full of pain, not emotional pages about how unfair it all felt. A simple record, dates, times. Who drove Mason to therapy? Who answered calls from school? Who stayed home when he was sick? Who handled the mornings when his anxiety got so bad he could not get out of the car? At first, writing those things down felt strange. Mothers do so much without calling it work. They remember which medication needs a refill, which teacher has been patient, which food a child can eat when his stomach is tight from worry, which silence means he needs space, and which silence means he is trying not to cry. Laura had never thought of those things as evidence. Now they were. Denise studied the child support file Jenna had sent. The longer she read, the colder the room felt. It was not one calculation. It was several. Mark had tested different versions of the future, like a man comparing insurance quotes. If he claimed lower income, support went down. If he pushed for 50-50 custody on paper, support went down again. If he created a debt to his mother, the marital estate looked smaller, and Laura's share could shrink. It was not written like a husband who was confused or hurt. It was written like a man cutting costs. Then Denise found the note Laura had nearly missed. If necessary, question paternity to delay support. Laura stared at the sentence until the words blurred. For a moment, the office went too quiet. Mark did not truly believe Mason was not his son. Laura knew that. Anyone who had lived in that house knew that. Mason had Mark's eyes, Mark's long hands, and the same little habit of tapping his fork twice against the plate before eating. This was not doubt. That was what made it cruel. It was pressure. A tactic, a way to delay support, scare Laura, and drag a 14-year-old boy's identity into a fight he never asked to be part of. Laura looked away. She could handle the affair. It hurt, but she could understand selfishness. She could understand lying. She could even understand cowardice. But this was different. This was Mark looking at their son and seeing leverage. Denise's voice softened. but only slightly. "Mason does not hear about this from you," she said. "Not now. Children should not be pulled into adult cruelty." Laura nodded. She hated Mark more in that moment than she had hated him when she saw Jenna's first message. Because the affair had wounded her. This used their child. After that meeting, Laura began living in 2 layers. By day, she was still the same woman Mark thought he knew. She made dinner. She asked Mason about homework. She bought groceries. She answered Mark in a normal voice. She did not accuse him. She did not tell him Jenna had talked. She did not let his face know what her hands had already held. By night, after the house went quiet, Laura became careful. She scanned receipts. She copied emails. She filled in the custody calendar. She read bank statements, line by line, the way she used to read numbers before Mark convinced her they were too complicated for her to understand. And the numbers began talking. She found small transfers to an LLC called Bennett Logistics Advisory. The name sounded professional enough to disappear inside a marriage full of boring paperwork. But when Laura looked closer, the address led to Mark's brother's house. Then she found regular payments marked as repayment to Mark's mother. Same amount, same week, clean, quiet, almost polite. But Laura had never heard of a loan. She had never signed for one. Mark had never once mentioned that his mother had loaned them money during 20 years of marriage. Money had been leaving the marriage in neat little steps. Not a dramatic theft. Something colder. A slow drain. When Laura brought the records to Denise, the attorney did not smile, but her pen stopped moving. "That," Denise said, tapping one line on the statement, "is something a forensic accountant will want to see." Laura felt no joy, only confirmation. Denise explained what would happen if Mark filed for divorce. They could request discovery, tax records, business income, account statements, loan documents, communications about custody and child support. If Mark had moved money, delayed bonuses, created fake debt, or used family members as cover, the paper trail might not stay hidden forever. But until then, Laura had to wait. That was the hardest part. Waiting felt almost unnatural. Mark still slept beside her, still smiled at neighbors, still kissed Mason on the head when it made him look like a good father. Still treated Laura like a tired wife who would never understand the game being played right under her own roof. But Laura understood enough now. She understood that anger could ruin evidence. She understood that patience could protect Mason. And she understood that the truth, handled carefully, could do more damage than any confrontation ever could. Then Mark did exactly what Denise predicted. He filed first. The divorce petition arrived clean, official, and cold. Laura stood in the hallway holding it, while Mason's backpack sat by the door. Her hands went cold before she even finished reading the first page. Mark called her emotionally unstable, financially irresponsible, overly dependent. He asked for 50-50 custody. He wanted the house sold quickly. He reported lower income than Laura knew he had. He listed debts she had never seen before. Laura read it once, then again, not because she was surprised, because every line felt familiar. She had already seen the plan. Mark had not filed for divorce in the moment of pain. He had staged it long before Laura ever knew there was a stage. And in that petition, the man she had loved for 20 years turned her into a stranger on paper. The legal fight did not end with fireworks. It ended the way most real battles end. In offices. In paperwork. In tired voices. In long tables where people who once shared a bed now spoke through attorneys. Mark did not confess. He did not fall apart in public. He did not suddenly become honest because the truth had cornered him. Men like Mark usually do not give people that kind of clean ending. But the documents did what Laura could not do alone. They spoke. The child support file spoke. The bank records spoke. The strange payments to Mark's mother spoke. The LLC tied to his brother's address spoke. The custody calendar spoke in dates, appointments, school emails, therapy reminders, and all the quiet labor Laura had carried for years without ever thinking it would one day need to defend her. Mark had built a version of Laura on paper. Then Laura brought better paper. That was the part he had not planned for. He had expected tears. He had expected panic. He had expected the exhausted wife he could dismiss as emotional and confused. What he got instead was a woman who had waited long enough to let the truth arrive in order. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but clearly. The final agreement was not some fantasy ending. Laura did not walk away with everything. Mark did not lose his job, his car, or his ability to tell people he had been treated unfairly. He still had his polished shirts. He still had his careful voice. He still had the face of a man who believed image could cover almost anything. But he lost control. And for a man like Mark, that was the real punishment. He lost control of the money story. He lost control of the custody story. He lost control of the version of Laura he had been preparing for months. He could not pretend the hidden account did not exist. He could not make the family debt look clean just because his mother's name was attached to it. He could not claim Laura was unstable without those messages following him into the room. The support calculation changed. The division of assets became fairer than Mark wanted. The rushed plan to push Laura out of the house did not move the way he had imagined. And Mason's life, the real one, not the one Mark had described for legal advantage, mattered. Laura did not celebrate. Not really. There are some victories that do not feel like champagne. They feel like sitting in your car after a long appointment, hands on the steering wheel, realizing you have been holding your breath for years. That was what freedom felt like at first. Not joy. Oxygen. 6 months later. Laura Bennett did not become rich. There was no mansion waiting for her. No new husband with a private plane. No moment where Mark dropped to his knees in the middle of town and begged everyone to see what he had done. Real life rarely gives betrayed people that kind of theater. Laura's ending was smaller. And maybe that was why it finally felt real. She moved into a townhouse on the other side of town. It was not as wide as the old house. It did not have the large backyard where Mason used to kick a soccer ball against the fence. It did not have the kitchen where Laura had once chosen every tile by hand. back when she still believed the house could hold a marriage together if she cared for it hard enough. But everything in the new place was clear. The electric bill had her name on it. The bank account was one she checked herself. The custody schedule was taped to the refrigerator, plain and simple, where Mason could see it without having to read the mood of the room. He knew Mondays were with his mother. He knew which weekends he would see his father. He knew who was picking him up from therapy. He no longer had to stand in a hallway, listening to adults speak in half sentences, fake kindness, and quiet warnings hidden inside family concern. That mattered more than square footage. Laura still had sad days. Of course she did. Healing after betrayal is not a straight road. Some mornings, she missed the old house so quietly it surprised her. She missed the maple tree near the driveway. She missed the dining room light in winter. She missed the version of herself who thought stability meant safety. Because that woman had been tired. But she had still believed the floor beneath her was solid. Other days, Laura wondered why she had not seen it sooner. Then she stopped herself. Because that was one of Mark's old tricks, even when he was no longer in the room. Turning his lies into her failure. Making his deception feel like proof that she should have known better. Laura refused to keep doing his work for him. Mark still tried to protect his image. Men like him usually do. He told a few people Laura had taken everything. He said the court had favored her. He said she had been planning against him for months. That last part almost made her laugh. Not because it was true. Because for the first time in their marriage, Laura had planned for herself. The people who mattered knew enough. Denise knew. The judge knew. The financial records knew. Mason's counselor knew. Which parent had been steady when nobody was watching. Laura no longer needed to stand in every room and correct every lie. That was freedom too. One evening, Jenna sent one final message. "I'm sorry for my part in it." Laura looked at those words for a long time. There was no rush inside her anymore. No need to punish Jenna. No need to comfort her either. No need to turn betrayal into friendship just because both women had finally seen the same man clearly. After a while, Laura wrote back, "I hope you never let a man make you smaller than your own conscience again." Then she put the phone down. It was not full forgiveness. It was not hatred. It was simply a boundary with a little mercy left inside it. Laura learned something she wished she had never needed to learn. A person can betray you with their body, but they can also betray you with paperwork. With accounts you never saw. With a story they tell other people before you even know you are being judged. With a custody plan that turns a child into leverage. With quiet sentences that make you question your own memory. But she learned the opposite too. The truth can be recorded. A custody calendar can speak. A bank statement can remember. An email can carry a date no one can argue with. A message can become evidence. And silence, when used at the right time, can become strength. One morning, Laura sat in her small kitchen while Mason ate cereal at the counter. His backpack leaned against the door. His hair was a mess in that careless teenage way, and he looked up and asked if she needed help taking out the trash. Laura smiled. Not a dramatic smile. Not the kind that says everything is healed. Just a small one. But it was real. The air in the house felt lighter now. No performance. No careful footsteps. No man upstairs rewriting reality before breakfast. No need to measure every question before asking it. Later, Laura opened a drawer and saw the folder that had started it all. The child support file, the custody notes, the printouts, the proof. She did not open it. She did not need to. Some evidence saves you once. After that, you are allowed to live without staring at it every day. Laura had survived the affair. She had survived the plan behind it. And somehow, she had survived without becoming cruel in return. That mattered to her. Because betrayal can make a person hard. It can make them suspicious of every kind word, every closed door, every number on a bank statement. It can turn survival into bitterness if no one is careful. Laura had every reason to become cruel, but she chose clarity instead. She did not win because she screamed the loudest. She won because she waited, documented, protected her child, and let the truth walk into court with receipts. If you have ever ignored a small red flag just to keep the peace, remember Laura's story. Sometimes the smallest clue is not small at all. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one keeping the best records. Subscribe for more stories about betrayal, evidence, divorce, custody, and the kind of justice that does not need to shout.